Welcome. This is For Better and Worth,
the podcast where we don't believe you have to sacrifice your relationship while you build your net worth.
We are your hosts.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ericka Young. And we're so glad you joined us today.
All right, y'all, come on. Let's get into it.
Hey, we are back. We are excited to be with you once again.
Hello, everybody out there.
Yes, we're really interested in kind of taking a look back at, our financial journey and making sure that we really consider how we began, and what got us motivated in the very beginning of our journey. So I'm really looking forward to talking about that today.
Yeah, let's jump in and talk about it then.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was thinking about is, what if we had never decided that we wanted to get out of debt? Like, it was a lot of debt at the time. We were in our early 20s. And when we added it up, we had $60,000 to start off with. And in our first 5 years of marriage, because of other car notes, we ended up having to pay off $90,000 in debt. And I started thinking, like, what if we never paid off that $90,000 in debt? Or what if we routinely went back into debt, got other cars, or never paid off the student loans, or always used credit cards? Like, what would life today be like had we never done anything to change that course? Because I think culture makes it easy to say, you'll always have a car payment. The student loans are going to be around like a pet. And everybody uses credit cards, right? Like, those are the things that we hear, and these are the messages that are given. And it got me to thinking, like, where would we be, you and I, if we never did anything?
Well, I think two things. One, I think we got to put a pin in that, okay? Because I don't think there was ever a moment that we decided we weren't going to do something. And it's crazy because, like, I think about our lives before we even met each other and how they were, we're going along in parallel. We hadn't intersected. We hadn't hit that perpendicular point where, our paths cross. And in parallel, I think I had always decided I was going to do something different with my life, and I think it just comes down to the fact that, I've told people how I went to school and worked full time, and that was hard. And I just had decided I was going to do something different. So when we got married and we realized how much debt we had and even accrued a little more debt, I was like, oh no, this can't stay that way. We have got to get free of this. And I remember, like, I think a lot of men in relationships, and I know women make more money than men and some men make more money than women, but I think inherently men have this sense of, I got to provide. And I know I felt that when we first got married. And I was like, man, I can't be walking around with this debt monkey on my back. I was like, no. I felt the pressure of, I got to get rid of this. And when we got out of debt, I was like, man, nothing changed in the natural, but I felt free. I felt like I was floating. And so I never thought at any point that we'd be like, well, we'll get to it, or, we just gonna, we'll do the minimums, and, we'll pick it up. We make more money, because I think that's the way a lot of people think. And so I said, put a pin in it, because I never thought that we would have not done anything. But I think the better question now is, what's at stake if people do nothing with their finances?
So for me, what was at stake was that $1,200 a month that we were paying in debt payments. Mm-hmm. So I'm a very literal, very numerical, data-driven type person. I'm an engineer by trade. That was my previous career. And I saw the big picture number, but it was more so the monthly number that had
Right.
me at odds. I was like, oh my gosh, 2 car payments. We had student loans, a big student loan that we had, consolidated. And I remember that number. I don't know if you remember this number, but it was
$51 and yep.
$451.21.
I was about, soon as you said it, I was like 451.21.
Yes. And we paid that, oh, I want to say for a little bit less than 5 years because we did consolidate it. And that plus we between us, we had 7 credit cards. Now they weren't,
They weren't huge balances.
they weren't huge balances, but we still had a lot to manage and run around and chase after. I mean, it was solidly 8 or 9 different payments every single month.
What's funny is like you said we had 7 credit cards, but what was the first thing we both said? Oh, they weren't huge balances.
Yeah, no.
And people lie to themselves all the time. Like, well,
Mhm.
I've got 12 credit cards, but the balances aren't even that high.
Right.
So
Right. And that's the thing. And so I saw the total that added up to monthly, and it made me sick to my stomach. And back then, our car payments weren't even that expensive, honestly. But the when you add it all up, it was more than $1,200. It was greater than the amount of our mortgage when we did, purchase a home, and that was sickening. It was bigger than what we paid in childcare. It was the most amount. It was the biggest, what do you call, a percentage of our budget that went
right.
out every single month. And so when you look at that, I was like, ooh, what it made me think about is, what could I do with $1,200 a month? What could that do for us? How could that change our life? How could that alter our future? And when we really got serious about paying off debt, it wasn't just $1,200 a month, it was that plus, right?
Right.
Because
right.
we paid off our student loan not in 10 years, but in less than 5. And so when you think about what you are sacrificing on a monthly basis to service debt, not to mention, now I'm not even going to go into how much we paid in interest, but not to mention the interest, and then consider, what is that taking from you or your future? Because I think at the time, one of the biggest things, one of the very first things that we really wanted to do was just simply have a vacation and not have money following us, after the vacation. And I remember we had a family reunion, and we were pretty darn close to getting out of debt. And all we did was pause on the extra money towards our debt repayments. And we planned for, a couple of months ahead of time. And we had no debt when we came back from that vacation. We drove to Vegas. I think we drove to LA first, and then we drove to Vegas, and then we came back home. So it was like a road
Yeah,
trip
I think we took the kids to
Disney.
Disneyland.
Yeah. And so we came back, and it was nearly a $3,000 trip because of the hotel stays.
That trip was so much fun though.
But we had a good time, and we had no debt that followed us. And that was a huge mile marker. It was one of those things that reminded me, this is what's possible if we don't have to pay $1,200
Right.
plus per month.
Yeah, but I really think about, if people don't do anything, I don't think they think about the long-term consequences of the decisions they make today. And if you say, "Oh, I'll get to it," let's just, keep paying the minimums like I just said a moment ago, and when we make more money, we'll address it. And you're sacrificing your future because what do they say? Money only amplifies more of who you are.
Yes.
If you are a financially irresponsible person
Ooh,
with a
Lord.
little bit of money, you're going to be a financially irresponsible person with a whole lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And people think that just because you don't have enough, that if you get more, it's going to solve and fix everything. And I don't agree with that because I think if you get a bunch of money and you don't know how to manage it, it's going to be gone because you're going to waste it on frivolous things because you don't have a plan and you're not executing to that plan.
And that's why it's so dangerous to have wishful thinking about winning the lotto or somebody hitting it big.
That's why they say lottery winners go bankrupt.
Yes.
They go broke because they don't know what to do with that money.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to manage that money. And so I think about consequences.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, look, you got to get your financial house in order today when you're making $30,000, $40,000. And then when God bless you and you making, $200,000 or whatever, $100,000, whatever it is, when he blesses you with more, or your gifts take you to places that, open up bigger opportunities, then you know how to navigate in those waters.
And so that's the scripture of the day, honey. He that is faithful in that which is least will be faithful also in that which is much. So start where you are. Come on now.
All right, Evangelist Ericka.
But I was thinking about, isn't it the monkeys, the hear no evil, see no evil, speak
Yes.
no evil? I feel like that avoidance of paying attention to, your money is something that people tend to do. And I think that we don't want to think about what's at stake because we don't want to see the total amount that we owe. We don't want to add up how much we don't want our spouse or our partner to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like it literally is hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. And avoidance won't get you anywhere either. You
Right.
avoid it long enough, then you know what I'm saying? Like we're gonna have this big mountain to climb, right? So let's not allow avoidance to keep us from considering the pros and the cons, right? Like there may be some cons to, one of the cons to remaining the same is frankly you got to actually get into action and do some stuff. You might have to say no to something.
I'm sitting here laughing, as you're talking. Look, we got to start putting video up here because people just need to see what's going on behind the scenes.
Uh-oh,
You're talking.
Are you holding yourself accountable, baby?
Well, I'm getting there. I'm getting there, people. We're working on it. But I think as you're talking, I'm thinking about the example, like, you sit at the stoplight and you hear somebody pull up and it's like, you hit a brakes or you hear a muffler or something, and I'd be like, don't they hear that?
Right.
They got to know what's going, something is not right with that car.
Yeah.
But then they just keep going like, I don't hear it, and they avoiding it, or they see the light on the dash like, I don't see that light no more. And they just avoid it.
Yes.
And then when you finally take it in, it's like, okay, you've been riding around with this squeak. Now you got brakes, you got rotors, you got what could have been a simple fix on the front side multiplies. And I think that's what avoidance does. It could be simple as, hey, we're gonna get on the same page, we're gonna track our spending, we're gonna put stuff, people don't write checks anymore, but we're gonna use some sort of register or tracking, or we're gonna be on a budget, we're gonna have budget meetings. It's some of those simple things you put in place opposed to, well, we just gonna play it by ear. We just gonna, make sure we know about where we should be, and then that begins to multiply because all it takes is one little domino to fall the wrong way, and it throws that whole wacky plan out of order, and then it's multiplied, and now it is something so much bigger opposed to, it could have been just change the brake pads, Nah, it's change the brake pads, calipers, rotors, all of that. And so I was just thinking about that as you were talking about that.
And I think that people are always waiting for this magical moment, right? They're like, okay, when I get this next job, or when we don't have to pay for childcare anymore, or when the kid goes off to college, or when such and such happens, or when we move into this house. I mean, everybody's always waiting for this other moment and not the today moment, right? So it's really about being in the here and now and what's possible. And I think the other thing with considering what's at stake if we do nothing is you don't have to do everything. You literally don't feel like you have to do this complete overhaul, right? It might just be that one thing that forces you to change a multitude of other things down the line. But if you just, maybe it's simply having a conversation, and it might be a hard conversation about where you are right now with your spouse. That's it. It might just be that start. But maybe there's this small thing or this one thing you can commit to. Do that for a couple weeks. Do that for a month.
What does it say? It says the saying goes, rather, 21 days to create a habit. And sometimes it might just be taking one thing that you're going to focus on and do that for several weeks to create this new habit.
Yeah.
and then you establish that new habit, then you can say, okay, I'm going to take something else on, and that begins to help establish another new habit. And it's not, look, people, if you've got teachers that or police officers that they're not the highest paid people out there, but they're retiring with millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
You know, police officers, they do their years of service and they get their pension and they've been saving. Then they can go off and live the life they want.
Yeah.
And teachers can, stop teaching and then boom, they're able to live the life that they want. And we've seen that firsthand with family members that I was like, man, they were teachers? It's like
they got bread.
Basically. Like, how did they do that?
I mean, and one of my classic favorite books is The Millionaire Next Door, and the same author wrote The Millionaire Woman Next Door. And in there, mostly educators are the millionaires next door. Like, a disproportionate amount of educators are winning with money simply because they were routine, consistent. They didn't touch the money long term. I mean, $200 a month for 40 years makes you a millionaire, period, hands down. So I think a lot of people don't realize how simple one small change can be, and how if you're just consistent with that thing, it adds up to a great deal.
It makes so much sense when you talk about, like, in context of the millionaire next door being primarily educators, because they're used to creating plans and they're used to following plans because they have lesson plans and they follow those and they create them and they're thoughtful about what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. They pull resources in. They're very creative. And it makes sense because it's those principles that if anybody were to apply them, they could get the outcomes and results. Because, when you think about what's at stake if you do nothing, you can miss out on a lot of potential opportunity.
Absolutely. It's not just saving for retirement or quote unquote becoming a millionaire. It is so many other life things. Honestly, it's sleeping at night, knowing, oh, okay, we have no debt and more than enough to pay for our regular routine expenses. That's peace of mind. That's
Absolutely.
That's putting my head on the pillow and being like, all right, we're good. It's good right now. And even if, which we have experienced, job layoffs, even if we have that, because we've had that margin in the budget, we're able to save the margin so we have an emergency fund. And that's
right. And you don't have to
huge.
stress out and feel like you got to take any job or just go after anything. You can be more selective. But I'll be even just more practical. Like, we had our daughter on the show, our oldest, and we told her, hey, you get your job, start saving in your 401k. And, she was like, well, it's not even a lot. It's not even going to make a difference. We were like, doesn't matter. Just do it. And she started doing it. It hasn't even been at her job for a year. And she was like, whoa, look what I've done in a year.
Because she set it up and then she forgot about it.
Yep.
And then when we went back and we did basically, hey, where are you at? What is your standing?
Review.
Yes, we did a review with her. And she was like surprised by how much was in
right.
there. And
I was like, see how much money they put in?
Yes.
See how much money you put in? And together you got this much money? Mm-hmm. And I think she was sold after that, like, oh, okay, this actually works.
Yes, right. And I think that's the key is set it up and forget it. Period. Yeah. I mean, there's other stuff that we could have missed out on. Like we gave our daughter a car when she graduated college. You know what I mean? We would have missed out on that opportunity because we wouldn't have been able to save for that, right? Or we wouldn't have been able to do the travel that we do. Right? There's lots of things that we could have missed out on. Honestly, just being a blessing to other people. That part.
Absolutely. Being a consistent and faithful giver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's a lot you can miss out on. And I don't know. I just think the benefit outweighs, any negative consequence. Because if you avoid it, you're putting off tomorrow what you can do today.
Yeah.
And I always think that creates negative consequence when you continue to push something down the road opposed to just dealing with it. And, I feel like anything that comes up, it's better to just deal with it in the moment. And even from a relationship perspective, we've even talked about that with our relationship. Like, in the moment, speak up.
Yeah.
And say, hey, you said this, it bothered me, I didn't like it, and you can address it, opposed to you say something and then, okay, I ain't saying nothing.
You do nothing, right? What's
then
at
you
stake?
stonewall and right, then it creates this whole negative consequence that something that was small that could have been addressed in the moment, and you blow by it and you forget about it. Now you marinating on it, you thinking about it. And then when it comes out, it is something that you have made this huge issue of that could have been squashed if you dealt with it in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing, same way with money. If you avoid it and don't start addressing it and getting in tune with creating a positive outcome, next thing you know, you're like, dang, man, I'd have missed out on the years of saving and, years of enjoyment. And life is to be enjoyed.
And I'm about to burst some bubbles out there.
We didn't talk about this beforehand, so I don't know where this is going.
It's real simple. A lot of people think that if they avoid it, eventually it will just heal on its own.
Well, wait. I better cut that out. I wasn't supposed to laugh right there.
We would love to think that an ailment in our body, if we just leave it alone, it's going to go away. We would love to think that, the things that are not exactly right at work, they'll eventually work out on their own. If we don't have to say anything, we don't have to change ourselves, we don't have to do anything. We would love to think that, if I just don't focus on dessert, then I won't eat it and I won't gain weight. Right?
How you bring that into the
because
conversation?
that's my problem. You know what I'm saying? That's my problem. Sugar, right? We would love to think that if we just avoid the real issue,
right,
that eventually it'll go away because we haven't given it any attention.
I'm afraid to put you on a sugar detox, though.
Oh my God. Anyway, we can't go there. That is not.
I'm gonna have to lock you in the room. Be like, no sugar for you.
I did it one time.
You be like, give me some sugar.
For real. That person would absolutely come out. I am 100% addicted to sugar.
Don't let it be a full moon. Shoot,
you know what?
Turn into a.
Excuse me?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you just call me a werewolf on the air? This needs to be cut out of the programming.
My bad.
But I think we tend to think if we give something time that it'll eventually heal, get better, or go away. And the bubble that I must burst is that is not true. And it certainly isn't true with money. Likely. The problem is if you do nothing, it will get worse because interest accumulates and compounds in the wrong direction if you continue to keep debt, right? But you want interest to work in your favor if you're saving money and you got compound interest in your savings account. The bank has compound interest on your credit cards, your debt, your student loans, and your car payments. So
the bank is getting rich.
They getting rich. And that's why you see your residence where you live and how big it is and how big their buildings are. There is a huge difference there. And so I think we have to just say what is really there to say is that avoidance will get you nowhere and likely will get you somewhere in a worse position. And so we can't stay in that place. That's not going to be healthy. Doing nothing is not going to work.
Look, I think people really do have to say, this is what I'm working towards. And I remember recently my nephew asked me a question, about just, trying to have success and, trying to accomplish goals in life. And I brought it down to two simple things. You got to have a plan and you have to execute against that plan. And that's where I think people go wrong is they have a plan, but the execution is not quite what it should be because we know circumstances come up, situations come up, and then sometimes you have to adjust and shift, but you can't let the circumstance and situations take you away from the plan.
Yeah.
And planning, as simple as it may sound, it is not rocket science.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just writing all your expenses down, adding them all up, knowing what that number is, knowing what your income is, and then assigning all of that income, that's a very basic budget right there. And that's a plan. And if you work that plan and you stick to that plan, you can get the positive outcomes versus saying, we just going to roll the dice and kind of let the chips fall where they may. And then you wonder every month, well, man, I got paid, but what happened to my paycheck?
And that's the key. Don't leave your future up to chance. Period.
Exactly.
Hands down, period. So, I'm challenged with the whole idea of the status quo, like leaving things as they are, doing nothing, staying where you are. Also, because I like to ask people, where do you want to be in a year from now? Who do you want to be financially speaking in a year from now? What does that person look like? What does that person do? What are the behaviors that person that you aspire to be like? What does it look like? What is that vision? And it's interesting because if I'm to ask someone that question, they're easily saying, "Oh, that person has an emergency fund, or they have this in place, or they can do this." And so then the question is, well, what is it going to take for you to get there? And I think a lot of people have this, it's like this other person, this separate entity,
they got an alter ego they're working with.
Yes, and they don't feel connected to them. It's like this other human. And I'm like, okay, so how can you get there? Because the whole point is we want to grow, we want to learn, we want to excel. We don't want in 10 years to be making the same money that we're making right now. That's clear. But we also don't think about, we don't want to have the same amount of debt today in 10 years. We don't think about those kinds of things. And so I challenge people to do that. And I think that is something that can be hard to have a conversation about with your spouse, your partner, right? Like, what do you see? And even if those visions are different, that's okay. But having that conversation to say, okay, so honey, what do you see in the future? What do you see tomorrow? What does it look like for you in 10 years? What's missing from your life financially that you would love to be able to reach for?
Look, you remind me of why it's so important in relationships and in dating situations that you date and you hook up with the right people.
Yeah.
You connect with the right person for you, because if you don't get the right person, they won't be able to help. When you're not feeling it, they won't be able to help keep you on track.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they are a spender that wants all the nicest, best things, they are not going to keep you from going into debt or doing crazy things. And it's just a reminder, just because somebody is beautiful or handsome doesn't mean that they are the right person. You better start asking people the right questions about, like, okay, how do you handle your money today?
Mm-hmm.
Because what they do today is not going to change overnight. And so you need to find out how they handle money today and how they intend to handle it in the future should you get together. Because, look, don't go hooking your boats up to people that are going to, just ride it hard and, not take care of it, not maintain it.
And you know what, Chris? That's attractive. You saying that, like, I think that, I mean, obviously we've been together for 25 years, but it was attractive to me that you were a grown man, like your behaviors, your maturity. When we were young, you were this same person, just not probably as defined, if you will, as you are today. But that was an attractive quality that you had, that you knew how to handle your business. I mean, we both had things on our credit report that we probably weren't 100%, excited about, but you handled your business. So you were not a person who didn't pay your car note on time, or who didn't, pay your credit cards on time. You weren't irresponsible with money. I mean, honestly, for both of us, most of our debt was our student loans. And it was attractive to me that you could handle yourself. I mean, you honestly, partially, I mean, you were nearly full time working, and finishing school for a couple of years when I met you. And
Shoot, I was working 35 hours a week, girl.
right,
That's like,
that's basically full time.
yeah, and I was taking a full course load at the same time. So that felt like two
I
jobs.
knew you were a hard worker. And so I would like to think like what's at stake in your relationships if you do nothing or if you just stay stagnant and you just allow the chips to, as you said, fall where they may. I think that is really something that a lot of people have to also consider.
Let's talk about that for a second, because if you don't address stuff and you don't try and decide that you're going to create a different outcome, it's going to bring additional stress in your marriage, in your body. That brings frustration, which you can take out on your kids, you can take it out on your spouse. It can be reflected in your performance at work. It can show up in so many areas. And those, I feel like, I don't know where I heard this, but it's like stress takes so many ticks off of your life.
Woo.
And so you start thinking about all the stressors that can come with money and finances, and money and finance lead into relationship stressors. All of those things are reducing your life expectancy, and it's reducing your quality of life and how you move and navigate on a daily basis. And so I feel like doing nothing or avoiding it is setting you up for failure. It's setting you up for ruin from a health perspective, from a relationship perspective, from a finance perspective. And so if you want to just go ahead and take all of that and just avoid it and do nothing, I'm not going to say that's the best decision, but you can start and take one step, followed by another step and another step and another step. And next thing you know, you're walking and you're covering ground.
Yeah.
And as you cover ground, you make progress because you get closer and closer and closer to your goal.
And that is why you just saying that it affects your health, literally your body, and the amount of time you are here on this earth is why professionally I've shifted to financial wellness itself, right? Like
Right.
the whole idea of this isn't just a nice to have, it is a part of your whole being and being well overall. That is the shift that I have made and am very committed to seeing workplaces change for that reason because it's a part of your health. It literally is a part of the way that you are able to show up either stress free or without the burdens that are taking you away from being able to be your full self at work. And so that is so near and dear to my heart for sure. So I'm really thankful that you brought that up. So I'm just curious, you know, what is going to make it worth it? How do we make this worth it for our audience?
Well, I think even before I get into the make it worth it, I think just thinking about the point you just made, I really just think about how I want to just be able to go through life and enjoy it
Mm-hmm.
without a bunch of stress. And I know we even had a conversation recently about our finances, and we talked to our financial advisor, and we're thinking, the next 10, 15 years, how we want to move and what we want to do. And it just changed the way I started thinking about things. Like I thought, well, maybe I'll just keep working for so many years. Then I was like, wait a minute, maybe I won't. Maybe I decide at some point that I want to stop working early. And so we even started talking about, well, how do we plan for that as a possibility? Not saying that that's what we would do, but it was like as a possibility. Or maybe I just shift and, I just start, doing something else.
Yeah.
And so I think you got to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about make it worth it, know that the cost you pay today will be less than the cost you pay in the future.
Woo, that's good. I don't have one. That's mine too. That's mine too, husband. I ditto that. Second, I am in amen corner. You can say it again. How about that? Say it for me. Say it so the back row can hear. Say it so
the cost you pay today is going to be less than the cost you pay in the future.
Woo.
So you better pay the piper today.
Yes.
Because that bill will be big in the future if you avoid it and you just keep kicking it down the road.
Don't kick the can. Ooh, that's good. Husband, you have been a gem today.
Well, you have been a diamond.
Hey, I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, hey, you know what? This is good. I love what you just said. I don't feel like any more needs to be said. So until next time,
we're out. Thank you for spending some of your time with us today.
We appreciate all your support. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to this podcast.
You can find us on Instagram at For Better and Worth.
And sign up for our email on forbetterandworth.com.
Till next time, we're out of here.